hope for us to dedicate mainly on ultrasound practice, but to utilize ultrasound as part of our active practice in our respective specialty. And it has helped many of us to facilitate the management of cases, especially when you develop already the skill of using it and you try acquiring your own machine, especially the portable ones. So hopefully that is our goal for today, to give you a primer on uh, how to use the ultrasound machine for head and neck surgery. So my topic is about thyroid ultrasound scanning, and why us learning this another modality, because as surgeons, we can be rapid learners of ultrasonography because we have the knowledge of the anatomy, excellent, uh, so that when we have this knowledge of the anatomy, when we utilize now the probe, we can uh, instantly correlate the anatomy with the sonologic image, and then correlate still with the image with the clinical findings. And then when there is a need for invasive procedures such as needle aspiration biopsy, we can instantly do it. So what we lack mainly are knowledge of instrumentation and image interpretation, as well as hands-on experience. So today, we will introduce the instrumentation and the image interpretation. And with regards to the hands-on experience, this will be continuingly developed individually as you go on with your practice. And this ultrasound workshop will be a very good initial exposure, therefore, and personal discovery if you want to pursue your future career in ultrasound uh, together with your specialty, which is head and neck surgery. So the objectives now of my lecture is to discuss thyroid ultrasound scanning, focusing on patient positioning and extent of examination, scanning technique, sonographic anatomy, thyroid anatomy, and image interpretation, and assessment of cervical lymph nodes, ultrasound-guided biopsy, and reporting of result. And in addition, we will also be utilizing the ultrasound in assessing vocal cord function. So ultrasound is derived from the word ultra, meaning excessive or beyond. And sonos means sound. So it is the frequency of sound beyond what is audible to the human ear. And this is the frequency above 20,000 cycles per second. And we call that hertz. The frequency range used in medical ultrasound imaging is between 2 to 15 megahertz or 2 to 15 million cycles per second. For head and neck ultrasound or ultrasonography, including the thyroid, it utilizes at least 7.5 megahertz. And as a general rule, the deeper the structure, the lower will be the transducer or frequency to be utilized. So there are only few controls needed to start the thyroid scanning. First is, of course, turn on the power. So later on, we scrutinize the machine that we have in the workshop. So after turning the power on, you encode the patient's identification. There's a keyboard there. And then after that, we select the preset to small parts. So hanapin natin kung nasaan yung small parts. Because if we select the small parts, it indicates now that we are imaging superficial structures. And that, with a small part, the depth is automatically set to a minimum and the focal zone set at near field. So automatic na yung machine. So we should not be intimidated by so many knobs in the machine, no? So this, so that after setting it into small parts, uh, it is a preset already, and included in these small parts presets are cardiac, abdominal, uh, included in the presets are the cardiac, abdominal, OBGYN, vascular, and the small part. So with this, we choose the small part. And after that, uh, after selecting this small part preset, select the required transducer. That's the next step. And this is guided by the specific organ to study. So that the presets are automatically established for the depth and the transducer selected. So small parts, and then after that, we select the transducer. And what we need to select is the so-called linear probe. For head and neck ultrasound, the transducer will be this one, and it is a high-frequency linear array transducer. So kita natin tuwid lang. In abdominal is the convex one, so some sort of an oblique ang pupuntahan ng sound beam, ng ultrasound. But here is a linear, so that whatever the length of your transducer, yun lang ang scope ng nai-image natin. So the scan lines are perpendicular to the probe face. May mga length yan ng probe. Kung masyadong malaki yung scanin mo, you utilize the longer length linear probe. But in head and neck, the regular one will do because maliit lang naman ang neck natin. With this probe, the depth of focus should be 3 centimeter or less. We mentioned that. We utilize linear probe for superficial structures, as we have mentioned. So, and the minimum is 7.5 megahertz. So we choose frequency at least 7.5. But if we have, the machine has more than 7.5, like 10, 11, or 12, we can choose the highest frequency because it gives us the highest resolution. But with regards to the probe, we should only choose the linear probe because this is the probe that is designed for a depth of focus or the depth of examination that you want to examine that is only 3 centimeter in depth. No? For abdominal, we utilize the convex probe because it's a deeper structure. So this, again, this will provide the highest quality resolution for a shallow depth structures like the thyroid gland. So thyroid scanning, okay, will be helpful as an adjunct to our physical examination. So again, with this, as clinicians, as surgeons, we do not automatically pick up the probe, but we instead examine first the patient. No? So clinical examination, history, physical examination. Then from the physical examination, you decide, do you want a focused or targeted ultrasound examination, only examining what you are what you have palpated, or do you want a whole scanning of the whole thyroid gland? So in either of the case, we need to learn the proper scanning technique. So with thyroid scanning, it provides sonologic features, that may suggest malignancy as well as diagnosis of non-palpable thyroid lesions. It is regarded too, therefore, as the surgeon's stethoscope. So patient is positioned supine with pillow under the shoulder and the neck is extended. So this is the patient positioning. The goal is to examine the entire right and left thyroid lobes, including the isthmus. So begin the scanning technique. This one is, I think, in your booklet, right? So begin the scanning technique with the transducer placed at the midline on a transverse plane. So this is transverse. If we shift the position, we get the longitudinal plane, but we start or begin the scanning with the transverse plane. And here, the relationship of the thyroid, so this is the thyroid gland here, to the trachea underneath it is shown, as well as the symmetry of the right, as well as the left thyroid lobe. Here, the isthmus will also be measured in an antero-posterior diameter. Okay? Because in the antero-posterior diameter of the isthmus on a transverse plane, it will give us whether there is thyromegaly or not, depending upon the measurements, which we will go into later on. No? So after the transducer at the midline, we now move the transducer laterally to concentrate on one lobe. Okay, so this is now, we move towards the either right or left laterally, and then concentrate on one lobe, move superiorly going up, and inferiorly to scan the entire lobe and its relationship to the carotid uh, artery. This is the carotid artery, and this is the internal jugular vein, and the SCM, and the strap muscle here. So with the ultrasound alone, if we are dealing with a thyroid cancer, we therefore can see with the image if we have extrathyroidal extension, because if the nodule is here and obliterates the fat plane, the hypoechoic structure between the thyroid and the SCM, we know that it might be invading already the SCM or in the strap muscle anteriorly, or even the vascular structures laterally, and even the trachea medially. So after this, we measure the lobe on its AP, antero-posterior diameter, and the width. So here, we can measure the antero-posterior and the width. The length, we will measure it later on the longitudinal plane. So now, as you go up and down on one lobe, once you are still seeing the isthmus, you are at the middle pole. So these are just arbitrary segregation of upper pole, middle pole, and the lower pole. So once you see the lobe with still the isthmus, you are at the middle pole. As you go up and the isthmus disappear, and you only see thyroid tissue, you are already at the upper pole. And then you move going down, you see the isthmus again, then suddenly it's disappearing, you are going into the inferior pole. So once you see nodule there, we describe the nodule, which we will discuss in a short while. Then shift the transducer to longitudinal orientation. So this is now the longitudinal orientation. Make sure there is a marker on the transducer, which one is up, which one is below for your orientation. If we cannot see the marker, you just have to press this area here. And if you press this area and this one is moving, we know this is the upper superior part of the thyroid lobe. So we utilize compression to orient us with about the transducer placement. So which is superior, which is inferior. So in here, if we see a nodule, we characterize again the thyroid nodule. And then we can measure now this time the so-called length, supero-inferior diameter. So if this is a superior, we go up there, down here, and then we can still measure the antero-posterior diameter, but we cannot measure already the width. The width comes from the transverse orientation of the probe. So briefly about the sonographic anatomy of the thyroid gland. So again, this is the isthmus. This is the SCM here, internal jugular vein, carotid, and we see the strap here. The strap is either the sternothyroid, which is closer to the thyroid gland, and the sternohyoid external to it. And this is the trachea. And then normal measurements, the AP diameter, antero-posterior diameter of the isthmus, if we measure isthmus from there to here, we can always freeze the ultrasound. We freeze it, and then we measure. So these are the things that we need to do in the hands-on, how to measure. And then Normally it should be 4 to 6 millimeter. These are data coming from foreign literature, but in the Philippines, it's a good data also to start when you start your ultrasound career. We can have maybe research on the measurements among Filipinos, but anything more than 6 millimeter AP diameter is considered to be thyromegaly. So thyromegaly, we know clinically can either be diffuse toxic goiter or endemic, the iodine deficiency goiter. So again, it's correlative. And we can instantly correlate if it is a thyromegaly we see in the ultrasound. We can instantly correlate just in front of the patient if we do the ultrasound by getting the history, the physical examination, and we come up with the clinical diagnosis uh, helped by the sonologic interpretation or finding. So with regards to the thyroid lobe, okay, the normal diameter will be antero-posterior diameter from there to here is 13 to 18 millimeter. Okay. For the length, 4 to 6 cm. Okay, so more than 6 cm, pwede ring thyromegaly na. But among them, it is the isthmus that is easiest to measure when considering for thyromegaly because that can instantly be enlarged, no? Unless if we are dealing with a nodular goiter whereby the isthmus can be normal, but meaning we do not deal with thyromegaly but just a nodular goiter. So it's a different clinical diagnosis. So how about diffuse thyromegaly? So again, it is more than 6 millimeter AP diameter. If it is purely diffuse thyromegaly with no nodular component, the description should be coarse echo pattern with no nodules, with these corresponding measurements that are above the normal range. So again, the thyroid lobe is more than 6 centimeter on a sagittal view. On an AP view, it is more than 1.8 centimeter AP view, and the isthmus is more than 6 millimeter. So therefore, sonologically, we commit there is thyromegaly, but is that significant clinically as either being a diffuse toxic goiter or an endemic goiter? It's up to us as clinician to answer that. Because sometimes it may not be significant at all if the patient is asymptomatic, and if we request for the biochemical test, still a normal value, it may mean really nothing at all. So we now come to the so-called description of the nodule. So we all know the American College of Radiology, TIRADS, Thyroid Imaging Reporting and Data System, the latest of which is the 2017. No? So I mentioned earlier that when we see a nodule, we need to characterize the nodule in terms of composition, echogenicity, shape, margin, and echogenic foci. So these are the 5 components of the ACR TIRADS, and each of these 5 components have several features with corresponding points. Okay, so these points will now be added to to come up with the TIRADS grade. No, so what we do not want is or are the TIRADS grades that requires biopsy if we follow the ACR TIRADS, and this is starting from TIRADS 3, 4, and 5. These are the TIRADS scores or grades that requires biopsy. So again, we go in detail briefly, no, with regards to the different component, just to highlight, no, just to highlight, no. So with regards to the composition, I hope it's clear, no. So it's either cystic or almost completely cystic, spongiform, mixed cystic and solid or almost completely solid. So with those corresponding points. So how does it appear? So if it is cystic or completely cystic, anechoic, nothing inside, no, wala man lang kaputi-puti, puro itim. High, no, anechoic, well-defined border, okay? Well-defined border with posterior enhancement. Kulay puti itong nasa ilalim niya because the sound beam will very well or will course through a fluid. Okay? Pag solid, hindi nababarahan niya yung sound beam. So medyo itim yung nasa ibaba. But here is a fluid, so there is a posterior enhancement. So most of these are features, these are benign features. So look at the thyroid point, it is only 0. Okay. How about spongiform? Composed predominantly, which is more than 50%, of small spaces. Sometimes you can see small spaces like this one inside a thyroid nodule, no, without irregular margin or suspicious echogenic foci. So we will go into echogenic foci later on. So if you see tiny spaces, it's not enough. No, we have to remember that there are still other criteria that needs to be filled up. If we commit it is a spongiform, the margin should not be irregular, and there are no other suspicious echogenic foci or simply microcalcification. Dapat wala siyang microcalcification. If we see that we commit it is spongiform, again, benign feature, which is thyroid score 0.0. So the other one is solid or almost completely solid. So meaning it is composed entirely or nearly entirely of soft tissue with only tiny spaces. So look at this one. No? Meron lang siyang cystic doon, but if you see this one is totally different from the uh, cystic there. There are uh, there are soft tissue inside. So see that? No, I hope you can see that. This one to here. There are soft tissue inside. So signifying this is a solid nodule. This time the point is 2. 2. So medyo tumaas na siya. Pwede na. Pwede nang mag-consider. Pero again, later on, as we have mentioned, there is no single parameter that will say it is malignant. It should be combination of features. So one of them is the solid or almost completely solid with regards to the composition of the thyroid nodule, and it is pointed as 2. Okay, so we now move on to the echogenic foci. So here, it's either anechoic, hyperechoic, or isoechoic, hypoechoic, or very hypoechoic. So, paano naman yon? So before that, another one is the mid-cystic solid. Sometimes you can see like this one, no? Bago tayo pumunta sa echogenic, no? It is composed of soft tissue and cystic spaces, no? Pero combination lang dito, pareho lang yun. But again, is thyroid 0.1, no? Okay? Kanina, it is consist mainly of solid component. Kaya tumaas siya 2. Pero ito halos nagbabalanse siya, no? Nagbabalanse siya yung cystic, may konting solid. So, bababa ng konti yung point mo. Okay. So, let's now go to the echogenicity. So, anechoic, without soft tissue component. Again, we are at the echogenicity, which is the second component ng thyroid. So, first is the composition. Then, number 1 is echogenicity. So, anechoic without soft tissue component applies to cystic or almost completely cystic nodules. And again, feature of a benign nodule. Kaya 0 ang point. Hyperechoic, increased, there is a solid nodule, okay? There is a soft tissue here, solid nodule, but we need to compare relative to the other parts of the thyroid tissue. So dito may naaninag tayo ditong isthmus, going to the isthmus. Pag mas maputi siya sa remaining thyroid tissue, we label it as hyperechoic. That is a thyroid 0.1. Okay? In contrast to isoechoic, same lang ang kulay with the remaining thyroid tissue, yung pagkaputi niya. Okay. How about hypoechoic? Saan naman kino-compare pag hypoechoic? Decreased echogenicity. So, mas maitim, no? Relative to the thyroid tissue. So, hypoechoic. Kanina, kung mas maputi, hyperechoic. Pareho lang, isoechoic. And then, kapag mas maitim, hypoechoic. So ang ano natin tatandaan natin, habang umiitim siya, mas lalong nagiging suspetya siya kung solid nodule. Kung cystic siya, totally anechoic, benign yan. Pero ito kasi solid may laman May laman. Okay, so this is thyroid point 2. Okay, if it is hypoechoic. More if it is very hypoechoic. So what does that mean? It is decreased echogenicity relative to adjacent neck musculature. Siyempre, ano ba pinakamalapit dyan? Either the SCM or the strap muscle. So, between the two, we utilize more the SCM kasi yun na yung malaki. Kung mas maitim siya sa SCM, very hypoechoic. And it is closer again to a feature of malignancy. Kasi tataas ang score mo, thyroid 3. But we do not say that if it is very hypoechoic, malignant ka na. Hindi. It's still again a combination of features. So we need to add or sum up all the different points. So how about the shape? So we are now through with composition, echogenicity, and then the third one is shape. So what is alarming if it is taller than white? So taller than white. So it is defined as a ratio of more than 1 in the AP diameter to the horizontal diameter. So, kunan mo yung diameter ng AP and then horizontal, if the ratio is more than 1, when your transducer is on a transverse plane or orientation, we commit it is a taller than white. Pero kahit hindi mo gawin yon, eyeballing lang, kita mo na na nakatayo yung nodule, nakatayo, hindi nakahiga. So that is a feature closer to a malignancy. So the point is 3. In contrast, if it is a wider than tall, no? So defined as a ratio of 1 or less. Kung nag-equal yung AP and yung horizontal diameter mo, equal lang sila, wider than tall pa rin yan. Ang ayaw natin yung less than 1. So 1 or less is wider than tall. Okay. So we're now through with the shape. We go to the margin. So among them, di ba, composition, echogenicity, shape, margin, then echogenic fossa is the last. So second to the last yan. Margin. Smooth margin, uninterrupted, well-defined, curvilinear edge typically forming a spherical or elliptical shape. So walang irregularity doon sa margin ng nodule. So, again, ay feature ng benign nodule. Okay. How about ill-defined? The border of the nodule is difficult to distinguish from thyroid parenchyma. So, tingnan nyo kaya nga, by utilizing the ultrasound, we should be worry about utilizing with the word ill-defined versus the other one, which is irregular. Kasi kung ill-defined, descriptive lang yun. Hindi mo lang na-distinguish yung margin niya with the normal parenchyma. Look, that the thyroid point is 0. Kumbaga, hindi mo lang siya na-distinguish. In contrast to an irregular margin where the outer border of the nodule is spiculated. So, may mga parang tumutusok doon sa thyroid parenchyma. So with that, we label it as an irregular margin. Therefore, the point is 2. Mas mataas na siya. Just like the so-called lobulated. So kanina tumutusok. Ito naman parang may pumupunta rin sa rest of the thyroid parenchyma pero lobulated lang siya. So thyroid point 2 pa rin. No? The border has focal, rounded, soft tissue protrusion that extend into the adjacent parenchyma. So we call it a lobulated point 2. Okay, so this is very important, extrathyroidal extension. So 3 ang point niya, ang taas, no? As a clinician, and we do the ultrasound ourselves, and we are dealing with a thyroid cancer, if we see this on a point of care ultrasound sa clinic mo, may extrathyroidal extension kahit sa PE mo wala, alam na natin that by guidelines, this patient will certainly require total thyroidectomy and a radioactive iodine treatment. So ganun ka-immediate yung discussion mo with the patient because we have already seen that there is an extrathyroidal extension into the muscle. And these are features of aggressiveness of a thyroid cancer. So, kung radiologist yung gumawa, o babalik muna sa iyo yan. So, there is some lag time, no? Kaya yun yung sinasabi natin that mainly learning ultrasound is purely on for majority of the time personal utility or use. Ngayon, kung may kulig ka, minsan makaka-receive ka na rin pag nalaman na nag-ultrasound ka, makaka-receive ka ng referral sa kulig mo and then you do it. Pagka sasabihin naman ni Rico yan, I think you can write it into sa reporting mamaya, you can write it into your report kung ano yung nakita mo, no? So, large comet tail. So, ano naman to? Bakit zero? So, bali wala ito. Large comet tail is an artifact, no? It's a reverberation artifact, no? So, the deeper echoes becomes attenuated and are displayed as decreased width, resulting to an triangular shape. So, minsan ito, kita nyo yung kulay puti. Mapagkakamala mo siyang microcalcification eh. Pero kailangan doon sa machine mamaya ano natin doon sa rep ng machine paano mo i-enlarge yung image para makita mo kung nagkakaroon ba ng buntot yang nagtatriangular shape pa yung microcalcification na yan. Pag nagtatriangular shape, ano lang yan, artifact. So we should not be labeling it as a microcalcification. So therefore the point is zero. Again, just a benign feature, no? In contrast to microcalcification, no? Yung microcalcification mo, or we call it punctate echogenic foci. These are dot-like foci less than 1 millimeter in diameter, no? Kadalasan yan wala yang triangulation. Dot-like lang siya na marami, less than 1 millimeter. So, kulay puti. Calcification is kulay puti. Hyperechoic siya with ultrasound. So, thyroid 0.3. Macrocalcification, bababa. 0.1 lang. No? These are calcification that are large enough to result in posterior acoustic shadowing. So, yun ang difference ng micro sa macro. Ang microcalcification dot-like, wala siyang posterior shadowing, wala rin siyang triangulation kasi hindi siya comet shape or comet tail, no? Pero ang macro, sa laki niya, nabablock niya yung sound beam, minsan nagkakaroon ng kulay puti doon sa ilalim niya. So that's macrocalcification. Most of the time, they are more than 1 millimeter. Okay, so we label that as, we point out as so now one only. Okay, so how about peripheral calcification? Calcification that occupy the periphery of the nodule may not be continuous but generally involves the majority of the margin. So ito, meron siyang calcification yan sa margin, no? So if you see this, the point is 2. Okay, this is just to show that the American Thyroid Association, we all utilize this one, right? Oh, the sonographic patterns with estimated risk of malignancy and fine needle aspiration guidance for thyroid cancer, and what is considered to be high suspicion by the American Thyroid Association, high suspicion nodule, it should be a solid hypoechoic nodule or solid hypoechoic component. Ibig sabihin, solid cystic pero merong yung solid niya may hypoechoic component, no? Okay. And at least ito with one or more. Yan, no? Ito na yung mga features na tatandaan natin: irregular margin, microcalcification taller than wide, rim calcification with small extrusive soft tissue component. Ito yung margin, either lobulated or irregular, and evidence of extrathyroidal extension. So, halos pareho sila ng thyroid. Ang American Thyroid Association, pareho sila ng thyroid. Ang thyroid lang, in-individual niya lang. But here, once you have a solid hypoechoic with one or more, dito nga sa ETA, one lang eh. So, mataas na. Estimated risk of malignancies already 70 to 90%. Okay? So, how about the lymph nodes? So, we are closing in now to the latter part of my lecture. Assessment of cervical lymph nodes. The normal lymph node should be small, less than 1 centimeter, oval, nakahiga oval, with fatty hilum. May puti sa gitna. Features of lymph node suspicious for metastasis: hypoechoic, rounded, no? rounded na siya, absence of fatty hilum, cystic or partially cystic. So kaya nga nag-hypoechoic siya, cystic na siya, no? And with microcalcification or even a peripheral vascularity kung ilalagay mo sa Doppler mode. So susubukan nyo rin mamaya yan, pa-Doppler natin, iset sa Doppler. So ultrasound-guided biopsy, another utility of ultrasound. So we are through with the diagnostic part through scanning technique. So the ultrasound-guided biopsy the role of ultrasound will facilitate the needle placement within the lesion. Okay, Dr. Rico Estrella later on will lecture about the proper orientation of the needle, but the principle is maintain the pathway of the needle within the long axis of the ultrasound beam or transducer so that as you penetrate the thyroid, you see the entire tract of the needle, and then you only stop when you see the tip of the needle puncturing the nodule. That's the time that you aspirate. Okay? And then the positioning should be supine with pillow under to hyperextend the neck. And then the FNAB performed under standard technique. So generally, these are the clinical applications of thyroid ultrasound scanning for diagnosis, whether we are dealing with diffuse thyromegaly, no, or simply nodular goiter, no, whether solitary, multiple, cystic, or with features of malignancy as mentioned, or assessment also with the cervical lymph node, so that if we ultrasound the thyroid, if we only say thyroid, it's only the thyroid. So we should be doing the so-called neck ultrasound to include the cervical lymph node. As well as another application is interventional ultrasonography, whether core needle or fine needle, guided by your ultrasound machine. So this is the reporting. This is just for repeatability. In the event that you want to monitor, at least initially you knew where you found the lesion on the right side. Dilagyan mo lang ng tuldok doon, no? Kung gusto mo. Ang usual na nakikita natin ngayon sa report ng radiology, dinidescribe lang naman nila doon. Then sa description lalagyan, let's say 1 cm mass, close open parenthesis, TR2, thyroid 2, sasabihin na sa inyo kagad eh. No? So, wala pang standardized way of reporting, but here, as surgeon, gusto natin kasi mabilisan lang eh, di ba? So we put some diagram like this, lalagyan mo lang ng tuldok, lagyan mo ng measurement, lagyan mo na ng thyroid, and then at least we come up with a sonologic combination of a clinical and sonologic diagnosis. So that's the different. This is the difference now. No, we come up with the diagnosis combining your clinical and your ultrasound imaging, including the neck. So level 1, level 2. So how about the level 1, level? How do we know we are in level 1, level 2? So by ultrasound, we correlate. No, we know that level 1 is above the hyoid, going to the submental, and then level 2 is between the hyoid and the cricoid, and then level 2 is above the hyoid, above the hyoid ang level 2, pero outside the digastric triangle. So the digastric triangle and submental is level 1. So if we put the ultrasound here, we know we are in level 1, level 1 din yan, level 1A and B. Then we go posterior, level 2. But as we go down along the jugular chain, below the hyoid going to the cricoid, we know we are examining level 3. And then below the cricoid, level 4. If we see the SCM when we are posterior to it, we know we are on level 5. And then within the 2 SCMs, we are in level 6. So these are correlating the anatomy where your transducer will be to come up with the standardized reporting whether it is level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this is now what we term as laryngoechography, which is a non-invasive evaluation of vocal cord mobility. No? So this one here, the position of the patient should be supine. The neck is hyperextended with the probe, linear probe, placed either at the thyrohyoid membrane, so thyrohyoid membrane, there is a window there, or at the cricothyroid membrane. So by placing your probe here, we see this image here. We see the arytenoids there, the vocal cord right, vocal cord left. These are in fact the vocal ligament, no, which is the vocal cord, no. This is the thyroid cartilage, so anterior, posterior. So if we correlate this with the flexible laryngoscopy, so the same. This is the arytenoid, and this is the vocal cord, no. So you see this one here. You see the arytenoids are moving together with the right and left vocal cord. Okay, so we therefore analyze or conclude that this patient has a normal vocal cord function, only that we utilize the non-invasive approach, which is the so-called laryngeal ultrasound or laryngoechography. Please do this also later on, dun sa patient natin. Okay? Diba, meron dito. But we have to remember that still the gold standard is the flexible laryngoscopy. So we see this one, this is moving, so this one is not, no? So paano ba makikita yan diyan sa ultrasound? See this one. So I hope we can appreciate it. Oh, kita nyo naman, halos di gumagalaw yung right niya, yung left gumagalaw. So correlative din naman siya. So again, it's an area for research to pursue, correlating echo and laryngography and your flexible. Because if you found out in your research that there is an excellent correlation, so we therefore go for the non-invasive one kung monitoring lang naman ng laryngeal vocal cord function before surgery in patient with thyroid cancer. Which we can see in the until matagal naman nang sinama yan sa NCCN guideline natin that especially in bulky disease, bulky thyroid cancer, no, consider assessment of the vocal cord mobility, and one of the modality here is an ultrasound, laryngeal ultrasound. So in summary, surgeons can be rapid learners of ultrasonography, okay? We only have to learn the proper way of doing the thyroid ultrasound scanning relative to patient positioning, scanning technique, both in the transverse and longitudinal probe. Of course, excellent knowledge on the thyroid anatomy, including image interpretation, also including the cervical lymph node in the evaluation. And when there is a need to perform ultrasound-guided biopsy, at least we are equipped ourselves to do it. And we should report our result consistently for repeatability in cases of monitoring, as well as correlation with our intro finding, so that in the event that it is correct, at least it enhances our diagnostic capacity that really we did the correct interpretation of the image. Kasi yun din yung nakita mo intraoperatively. So thank you and good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Visquera. May I call on Dr. De Jos to give his lecture on common abnormalities in thyroid ultrasound?
Good morning, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Dr. A.P. De Jos. The lecture by Dr. Bisquera gave you a broad view on what to do and how to do it. Okay, so this one that I will be giving will be more focused. We'd concentrate more on what you should be looking for when you're trying to assess nodules in the thyroid gland. Okay, so I have no disclosures. So for this part of the lecture series, we'll try to review the indications for the use of ultrasound in the assessment of thyroid nodules. And the bulk of the talk would be on discussing the ultrasound features of a malignant nodule. And then we'll have a brief discussion of the ultrasound scoring systems. Okay, so just a review, no? You know that y- you're all head and neck surgeons. You're already familiar with this epidemiologic data. You all know that nodules in women are 5 times more common than in men. And they say that by the age of 60, half of the population will have nodules, although most of them would be asymptomatic. Now, the detection of nodules in the thyroid gland increases with the use of ultrasound. So this the increase is up to 50 to 70%. Now, most of the time we ask for an ultrasound of the neck, okay, for other reasons. And that's why those nodules detected through this method are called incidentalomas. And nevertheless, the incidence of malignancy is the same all throughout. No, it's very low. It's just 7 to 15%. Okay. Now, compared to PE, okay, ultrasound is a better tool in detecting nodules only for one reason, because it can detect nodules less than 1 centimeter. The threshold for us palpating a nodule, the threshold for the size is at 1 centimeter. The overall sensitivity for this ancillary test, okay, if you use it for diagnosing malignant nodules, around 83%. But okay, this will depend on the experience of the one performing the test and the equipment being used. Because as you will see here, the sensitivity, you have a wide range in the sensitivity and specificity, and those are the main reasons why. Okay? So, well, this is a recommended test in assessing malignant nodules, a recommended imaging test, okay, for in assessing thyroid nodules, and because it is the most effective imaging modality, and for two reasons. It's widely available and it's very inexpensive. Widely available, man. Other practitioners already use this at bedside, okay, because they have their own machines. Okay, so we all know that it's a non-invasive ancillary test. You don't expose the patient to any ionizing radiation. And aside from getting a picture of the thyroid gland, it also can help us when we perform interventional procedures, okay, like in aspirations. Okay. Also, it helps us in evaluating for regional metastasis. Okay. So we could also evaluate cervical lymph nodes with the use of this. That's why when we make or write down a request, we don't request for a thyroid ultrasound. We request for a neck ultrasound. Okay? May mga philosophizing radiologists that they will just focus on the thyroid gland. Okay? So we want to get a clear picture of the area. Okay? Pareho lang yata singil nila. Doesn't matter. Okay? As mentioned by Dr. Bisquera earlier, it's a very effective tool in assessing invasion, especially of the vascular structures. I find this more effective in assessing vascular invasion because if you use a CT scan, it's not that very clear. Most of the time, you will get a reading from a radiologist that it's the tumors then is adherent to your vascular structures or invasive vascular structures. And then when you open up the patient, you'd see that there's a clear margin. Okay, because most of the time, the areas that they describe as invasion are only desmoplasmic reaction. Okay? That's why this is a better tool in delineating if there's vascular invasion. Okay, I mentioned earlier, it's better for identifying small nodules. And the best thing about this is there's no need to prepare the patient. If you have your own ultrasound, you can perform it right away in your clinics. Okay? You don't need to have the patient undergo NPO, or you don't have to inject any contrast material. Okay, so ultrasound is best used in the detection and characterization of thyroid cancer. And as I mentioned earlier, you can use it also to assess for no regional metastasis. Can assist you in it can be used as a guide when performing your biopsy. And it's this one, the last one's already in most of our guidelines. It's a very effective tool used for follow-up and surveillance after surgery for malignancies. Okay, so let's now go to the five main features, okay, of a malignant nodules. This has already been mentioned by Dr. Bisquera. Okay, we'll just be focusing more on it. Okay, so the first one is echogenicity. It refers to the brightness relative to normal thyroid parenchyma. You've already seen this picture. That's a picture of a normal thyroid gland. Okay, a normal thyroid gland. Wala. Okay, is described to have a homogeneously hyperechoic uh, structure. Okay, and this is because of its anatomy. Okay, so the bright appearance is because of the things that make up your thyroid gland. Ano ba yung basic unit ng thyroid gland natin? You have your follicles, and you know how it's constructed, diba? It's a space surrounded by your follicular cells. And that space is the one that reflects the ultrasound waves. That's why it's very bright. Okay? So malignant nodules are hypoechoic. It's lighter. You see that almost that the darker round structure there towards the posterior end. That's malignant nodule. Okay? It's darker because we know that in thyroid and malignant nodules, you have hypercellularity. So the normal anatomic structure disappears. The space within the follicles are now filled up with malignant cells. And because of that, there are lesser acoustic interfaces within a malignant nodule. That's why it appears darker. Okay. Now, you see the numbers here. Okay. Very low sensitivity, although the specificity is high. We will try to compare that with other features. Okay. The second one would be the dimension. Okay. Malignant nodules are taller than wide, and you can detect this on transverse view. Okay. So here, the AP diameter is greater than the transverse diameter. Now, we can consider this as an objective parameter because it involves measurement. So walang judgment dyan. Okay? You get distinct numbers. And you look at the numbers I posted below, it's almost the same. No? Very low sensitivity and high specificity. Although for diagnostic tests, we look for specificity, no, instead of sensitivity. Okay? Third would be the presence of microcalcifications. So these are white dots. Okay? May measurement yan. May specific measurement yan. These are white dots that are measured at less than 2 millimeters. Beyond that, it's already macro calcifications. Okay. Now, you will find this in papillary and medullary thyroid cancers. If you see it in papillary thyroid cancers, you can correlate it later on, okay, when it is examined under the microscope by the pathologist. These areas with microcalcifications usually correspond to your saboma bodies. Okay, so what about macrocalcifications? Do we consider malignancy when we see this? Well, it's very, we really don't use this as a criteria because they're seen in both benign and malignant nodules. Okay. Now, you see this mostly in areas of fibrosis, tissue degeneration, and necrosis. Okay, especially in nodules that have a rapid growth. Okay, in a short time. Okay? We have benign nodules, right? Mga goiter na biglang lumalaki, and it's because of bleeding. Then you might kita yan. And sometimes for long-standing nodules, you will find them at the periphery, as in the picture below. Okay, you call that your peripheral rim calcification. Okay, now fourth criteria would be the margins. So malignant nodules would either have a microlobulated speculated, or infiltrating margins. The one here, it's not that ganun kalinaw eh. Okay? So the one, again, it's in the posterior part, the thyroid gland there. And you look at the margins, okay? You have rounded protrusions. That's what we call microlobulated. Kung mas angular siya, yun yung speculated. Okay? And then if it's infiltrating, you wouldn't really see a clear margin there. It's obscure. Okay? So this would indicate invasion into your surrounding parenchyma. And this is the one, okay, in studies, they found that this is the one that has the highest inter-observer variability. Okay? Again, look at the numbers, almost the same. Sensitivity, low sensitivity, high specificity. Okay? Now, we also look at the distance from the edge of the nodule to the edge of the thyroid parenchyma. Okay? If it's more than 2 millimeters, you can safely say na most likely it will not invade the surrounding structures. Okay? Okay, and last, okay, you have vascularity. So dapat may special ano yung uh, uh, function yung ultrasound nyo na kayang mag-Doppler examination. So malignant nodules are characterized by marked intrinsic hypervascularity. Okay? And you'd see it more in the central part of the nodule. Okay? So this one has a higher sensitivity compared to the others, no? But a lower specificity. Okay. Now, in several meta-analysis, okay, there are three characteristics that they found that are most closely associated with the malignancy. One are the dimensions. The second one is the presence of microcalcifications. And the third would be the presence of microlobulated or speculated margins. But they did not find a single sonographic feature that is definitive, okay, for malignancy. Okay. That's why, okay, what's recommended is for you to look at the bigger picture, correlate everything. And for us, because we have this advantage, we are clinicians, we should always correlate it to the clinical findings. Okay? Yung advantage natin sa radiologists. Okay, now Dr. Bisquero showed you earlier as for standardized ultrasound report form. Okay, now standardization of reporting of your findings is very important. Now, because this can help in reducing inter-observer variability and can help later on, okay, in when you do your research. Now, if you have a structured reporting template, as what showed earlier, actually that was created by Dr. Bisquera for PGH use. Okay, this could lead to better description and assessment of malignancy. Okay. Now, as it is, iba-iba yung mga report forms niyan, even here. Okay, bawat institution iba. Okay, but all of them should report on the characteristics that we've just discussed earlier. Because these are the ones used by the different specialty societies. Okay? Yun nga lang, iba-iba yung the way they interpret it. Okay? So, we call that the scoring system. So there are two types. You have your pattern-based and your point system. Pattern-based scoring systems are being used by the American Thyroid Association, British Thyroid Association, AACE, and these are characterized to have high sensitivity and negative predictive value. The point system, the one showed earlier, discussed earlier by Dr. Bisquera, okay, is being used by the ACR TIRADS. Yeah, and they're characterized to have high specificity and positive predictive value. Right now, okay, this is the more favored one for those using the point system, the ACR TIRADS. But it's not the only TIRAD system here in existence. Huh? You have your EU TIRADS being used by the European Union. And for the younger ones here, mas siguro favored nila yung K-TIRADS, the Korean TIRAD scoring system. Okay? And if you look at this, okay, pare-pareho lang naman yung pinapakita nila eh. They're trying to determine the risk of malignancy. Okay? So they all agree, okay, on the characteristics being used. And these are the 5 characteristics we just discussed. And all of them recommend thresholds on when you perform your intervention to confirm the diagnosis, okay, or when to perform your biopsies. There are several studies that have been done comparing these scoring systems, and they have conflicting results. So it's ripe for a meta-analysis if the younger ones here would like to have a research assignment. Okay. And all of them agree that prospective studies and larger cohorts are needed, okay, to be able to standardize these scoring systems. But one study in particular, okay, noted that when you integrate the ultrasound findings with the clinical findings, you will have a better risk stratification or risk assessment. Okay. So, do we have any questions? Yes, sir.
The millimeters, are they supposed to be very accurate? Number two, my question with regards to calcification, no? Forgive my innocence. How come the of course, calcification can also say if it's malignant, things like that, but how come micro compared to a macro? What's the difference? And number three pala, sorry. Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be another topic, but let's say how come if it's less than 1 cm TI-RADS 5, sorry, or if it's less than 1 cm TI-RADS 5, and then you can say you can observe, does it always mean that it might be a possibility that it may not be cancerous? Or is it presumed cancerous but you want to see the growth pattern pag less than 1 cm ang TI-RADS 5? Thank you.
Okay. For the first one in measuring it, it's fairly accurate kasi you measure it with the use of the machine. Okay? And it's also magnified, so hindi naman mahirap yung 2 millimeters. Okay? For microcalcification, actually, yung microcalcification does not just confined here. For any malignancy, that's the one that we look for. Okay? Macrocalcification kasi could be more of debris. Okay? And then the last one, okay, that's the problem with the scoring systems. You know? Personally, I don't use it. I'm used more of the ATA, the pattern recognition. See, the Dr. Bisquera, they use it. Even here, if you ask the radiologists, they don't use it. It's very tedious. You have to memorize all of these things. Okay? Pero kasi kung may features na ganun, most likely malignant na yan. Okay? So you really don't have to score it. And one thing that I've emphasized is we always correlate it with our clinical findings. Okay? Even though that on ultrasound, okay, you see that it's benign based on the characteristics, pero ang PE nyo, hard siya, anong papaniwalaan nyo? Diba? So you always call it, yun ang advantage natin. And we use that advantage to the fullest.
Doctor, my question with regards to the less than 1 cm, of course, you rely on the other grading systems, but I'm just curious with the rationale of the less than 1 cm and you maybe can observe.
Okay.
Does it always mean even if you have a less than 1 cm TI-RADS 5, does it still mean that there's a malignancy but it's just small? Or there could be a small possibility that's why you can observe, you're not leaving it behind, but it was possibility that it may not necessarily always be 100% malignant.
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
that the reason? No.
Yeah. We all know
Thank
that
you.
there's such a thing as a papillary microcarcinoma, right? And the recommendation for that, you either perform surgery or you do active surveillance. That's what uh, pwedeng i-observe. Okay? And the heart on determining whether it's or confirming whether it's benign or malignant by use of an biopsy, magkaiba pa rin yung recommendations eh. I think it's the NCCN that advocates sampling before embarking on an active surveillance, but the ATA yung well hindi pa na-update siya, does not.
So if I see, doctor, a patient with a less than 1 cm and normal looking, clinically normal looking neck and less than 1 cm TIRADS 5, can I tell the patient that that there's cancer definitely, but it's just small or no?
Yeah, if you have basis.
But if I also say maybe observe it, may not, we can watch, will not leave it behind. But as of right now, we can see because your neck looks normal. Probably also don't have, but we'll still have to watch over it.
Yeah.
Pwede ba yun? Is that two answers correct? Are the two answers correct?
Yes, we can do that. But remember that we have to lay down everything to the patient. One,
Thank you.
that it's probably cancer. There's a chance for it growing. And may criteria naman tayo with active surveillance eh. But the thing is, you have to tell them that even if it grows, we decide to perform surgery later on, the results will be the same. Okay? Ang pinakamahirap sa active surveillance is convincing your patients. Kasi sasabihin nyo, cancer yan eh. May ano yan, may effect yan. Okay? That's why it's yung hindi very popular yung active surveillance dito sa atin because of the anxiety caused by having cancer there and not doing anything. But in other countries in Asia, Korea, Japan, marami na silang patients dyan eh na undergoing active surveillance. Okay? Any other questions? So if none, let me just summarize. So if thyroid or neck ultrasound is used to differentiate benign from malignant thyroid nodules, there are 5 main features that are be used to consider malignancy. There are several scoring systems developed, but standardization is still needed, and it's always better to correlate the clinical findings with the ultrasound features of a nodule. Sana man lang kahit yung last statement na yan sticks to us because we are all clinicians. Okay? Thank you.
So, what happened? Okay. So once again, good morning to everyone. I'm Dr. Angelica Montesa. A little disclaimer lang, I'm not an ultrasonographer, I'm a search onco, so good morning. So for this morning, I am tasked to discuss about the care for ultrasound machine and transducer. No? So just show of hands, residents or consultants who perform their own biopsies using the ultrasound. Okay. Show of hands again, consultants or residents who have their very own ultrasound or personal ultrasound machine. Yon. Okay. So, thank you. So, for this morning, I'll be discussing the proper care and maintenance of ultrasound machines and transducers. Remember, these devices are essential tools in diagnostic imaging, and their optimal function directly impacts the quality of patient care. So by the end of this lecture, hopefully, all of us will be equipped and with practical knowledge on how to handle, clean, and store these machines properly to ensure correctly accuracy, longevity, and safety in clinical practice. So these are my objectives for this morning. Learn how to care for ultrasound machine, on how to clean and handle. Number two, learn how to care for the ultrasound transducer, cleaning, handling, and disinfecting. So let's proceed with the ultrasound machine care. So why do we need to care for the ultrasound machine and transducer? So number one, it's very important. It keeps our patients safe. It supports more accurate diagnosis. It extends the equipment's lifespan. It also avoids expensive repairs, reduce current and future repairs. So remember lang, these machines, they cost millions. And hindi ganon kadali mag-procure unless you have the millions, right? So let's care for our machines. So these machines are critically important in equipment in our patient care. It's also expensive and they are prone to damage when not properly used. So how do we care for our ultrasound machine? So number one, I don't know if you guys, do you read the user manual or diretso na kayong go to your ultrasound machine? Does anyone read the user manual? Medyo mahaba siya. Okay, so every machine comes with an operator or user guide which can be used as a source in taking care and maintain and operate on the machine so that it will last a long time. So number two, use the machine properly. So in good condition and avoid many problems. So number three, so every time you use your machine, you clean it before and after use. Number four, it's very important to disinfect your machine. So any part of the machine that comes in contact with your patient, such as your fluids, wipe it down immediately with only approved cleaners. Okay? Sige. So next is this table shows you what are the different cleaning solutions that you can use for your ultrasound machine. So you have your mild soap solution, you have your purified water, your 70% isopropyl alcohol, you have your different sprays that you can use, your Protex, your Saniclot. But here in our country, most of the time we just simply use our alcohol, right? Or sometimes betadine. Number five, during transport, it's very important to take precaution that check everything, the cords, the transducers, so that damage to the wheels or in damage to the wheels is the most common and most costly. Okay. So how do you prevent this? Yung hook cords to clips, keep it away from the wheels and keep the machine the highest position to avoid the cords hitting the floor. Eto, I don't know if you guys do this, but I personally, I don't do this. You can ask someone from the company to clean the air filters, especially it's located at the back of your machine. Okay. If it's dirty, you can use a vacuum cleaner or soap and water. And then number seven, ultrasound probes should be on the hand or holstered, not dangling anywhere from your machine. Okay. Okay, number eight, do not leave sharps or open gels on the machine. Keep your working tray clean as possible. Okay, leave nothing on the tray. And number nine, by having a regular maintenance plan performed by a trained professional is the best way to keep your ultrasound machine running well for a long time. Okay? Next is we go to the transducer. Okay, so how do we care for our ultrasound transducer? These are the general tips on how to care for it. Number one, you check the system connector. So these are the parts of your ultra of your probe. So you have here your system connector, you have your probe cable, your probe body, and your transducer and your lens. The most common part that is most of the time really damaged would be the probe body, and as well as the transducer lens. So these are just the tips on how to care for on how to care for your probe depending on what location of your probe, no? So etong number 3 and 4 yung laging madalas nasisira. Especially this one. Ito yung laging nabebent. This one naman, it opens kasi sometimes napopoke ng needle. So be careful lang on um on the usage of your probe. Okay, so handle all transducers with extreme care. Ensure that the connected transducers are placed in the probe holder yoke when not in use. Utilize wall-mounted transducer holders with lens facing up. Visually inspect transducers and cables for damage prior to connecting to the ultrasound system. So check for bends, cable cuts, surface cracks, exposed wires or shielding, and fluid leaks. Anything na you see this in your probe, report it to your provider. Okay. So these are just some of the don'ts. Do not drop, do not dangle, do not um when you have an open or cracked probe, do not put any water. Okay, so do not let your probe dangle loosely. Do not immerse your transducers deeper than the permissible level, and do not apply excessive bending or kinking. Okay, so why is there a need to clean our probes before and after using our ultrasound machine and the transducer? In one study, they showed that bacterial contamination of ultrasound probes prior to hygiene training proved to be high and showed higher bacterial load than toilets, seats, or bus poles. Okay. So what are the most common bacteria or microorganisms that can live in your transducer or your machine? For the bacteria, you can have your E. coli. For the fungi, you have your Candida. And for the viruses, you have here your HSB, your HBV, and the rests. So it's very important to put a stress on cleaning your probe, disinfecting it. So cleaning is the removal of all visible soil or contaminants from the transducer. Okay. It says here, do not reuse cloths or wipes, soap, detergents, or any enzymatic cleaners. Okay. That's not recommended by your company where you bought your ultrasound machine and your transducer. Okay, so what are the examples of cleaning methods? You have your low-level disinfectants and your high-level disinfectants. It depends on what type of procedure we'll be performing, either on the external, internal type of ultrasound procedure. So for example, if we're going to use a non-critical or contact lang with the skin, using quaternary ammonium, compounds or phenols. But for semi-critical procedures, you can use your hydrogen peroxide, your Sidex. Okay. Okay. So this actually shows you what type of procedure you will be performing. For example, your external, your interventional, and your internal transducer procedures. As you can see here, the level of pag ginagamit yung probe, you have to clean your probe depending on it, whether you use a cover for your probe or not. But prior to that, it's very important to disinfect it and then place a cover or yung provider ng company ng probe natin. So it's always very important to remove any residual gel using disinfectants and then rinse and then store your transducer properly. Okay, so for the daily and long-term storage, always store your transducers on holders. Make sure it's clean and always check for the cables. Ito yung lagi natatanggal during transport or during usage. Okay? And then avoid storing transducers in areas of temperature extremes or in direct sunlight. And never store a TE transducer in the carrying case except during transport. So lastly but not the least, it's very important to get a regular maintenance plan. Thus, it's being performed by trained professionals or coming from the company in order to keep your ultrasound machine and your transducer well for a long time. So that's for my part, and thank you for your kind attention. Good morning. Okay. If there are any other questions, if none, I would like to call on Dr. Celia for the next lecture. Thank you.
Yeah, again, good morning. So, my lecture will be about interventional ultrasound or needle guidance techniques. So, how do we start learning how to do these procedures, biopsy procedures, with ultrasound guidance? No? The techniques we employ for these procedures are very similar. That basically all we need to do is successfully guide the needle into the structure in question with the aid of the ultrasound. And then only the needles, the length, the caliber of the needles would actually be different. No. So for what materials do we need? So I'm a hepatobiliary surgeon. I actually do percutaneous biliary drain catheter insertions. But in your use case scenario, no, yeah, we only need to hit the nodule, no, that we're going to biopsy with the needle. So the difficulty here in ultrasound guided needle biopsy would be hitting the mark or hitting the nodule with the needle. And there are two ways to insert the needle under ultrasound guidance. It's the in-plane approach or the out-of-plane approach. No, parallel or perpendicular, describing the relationship. Wait lang. No, this is parallel or perpendicular, describing the relationship of the needle to the ultrasound probe. So as you can see here, no, this is the parallel insertion technique. Note that the needle is parallel to the long axis of the ultrasound scanning plane, as also seen in this diagram at the top. Now the needle would be parallel to the plane of the ultrasound. No? And these are the various angles by which the needle can be inserted, can be completely horizontal or at an angle. So in the in-plane view, a longitudinal section of the needle is seen on the ultrasound. This is the needle. No, in contrast, this is the out of plane technique wherein the needle insertion would be perpendicular to the scanning plane of the ultrasound, as exemplified by the diagram at the bottom. No? So you can see it's the orientation of the needle would be perpendicular to the